Hello, we're going to be carrying on with our shillelagh this week. So I know for you guys it's been like 1 week as always, but for us it's been about 3 weeks in between filming these, so I'm going to try and pick up on where I left off. Last time we were looking how to deliver strikes. So we were looking at our guard and throwing out these kind of fast sort of whipping strikes coming out. What we haven't covered yet is how not to get hit. Yeah, now that should be the first thing, but until you teach somebody how to hit, you can't teach them how to defend. So, Michael here is basically going to be hitting me, and I'm going to be showing you the methods we use for not getting hit. So, as I said, we've got this under pressure, so that I'm almost trying to break it forward. So at any given point, if I take my hand off, this is going to fly forward. Equally, if I take my hand off and instead of pushing forward with this one, I turn this one over, that same coiled force that I've got here, instead of throwing it forward, will throw it up to the side. So what I'm going to do for the first one is if an attack is coming into this side of my head, yeah, in whatever way it's coming in, boom, that just bounces straight up and blocks against that. Now what I need to be careful of is I don't just let it swing through my wrist and over, because I'm going to put a lot of strain on my wrist, and I'm going to take my cane well out of use. So instead it goes up, and then I kind of sink it into my ribs, so that I end up quite close in. I don't know if you can see that. So I start out here, boom, and it sinks into my ribs so that it stops just at the side of my body. And I can quite happily deal with that, boom, and straight back to guard again. So if I needed to, I can straight out with my counter-attack there. We will look at some ripostes and some better ripostes next week. But the first thing to realise is anything coming in essentially above the stick from either side, so if it's coming in the other side, I can flick the other way. So now whichever way Michael goes, I can quite happily deal with that without having any worries about what's coming into the side. Now, of course, what this won't do is deal with anything coming in directly from above. Now, that's not a problem if you're fighting somebody using Doyle Shillelagh, because this is not a strike. However, just because we don't use it doesn't mean we don't know how. We can't ignore how it should be defended against. So if Michael was going to do a strike coming straight in, if I do this kind of parry, it does absolutely nothing and I still get hit on the head. So instead, quite simply, as that attack comes in, boom, the hands go out. Now we've got to be quite careful about this, because we don't want bent arms when we do this, because when we bring bent in arms here, this is still very close to our head. And for those of us who have studied their Vigne, that can coil round very easily into a wrap shot and hit the top of my head. So when that comes in, even though it's quite close, boom, it goes all the way up and back again. So as that strike comes in, there is absolutely no chance of it actually hitting me in the head, but my hands come straight back down again afterwards. So I've now got the top, basically anything coming in above the cane, I'm now happy with. Now, if it comes in against the ribs, so coming in just underneath the cane here, I'm going to do pretty much the same thing. I'm going to drop the cane down this time to connect with it. So as that comes in, boom, and back again on the other side, I can bounce it and bring it straight back in again without any problem. There's not really a lot to go over with that, it's just swinging. Again, I'm going to sink it into my shoulder so that it doesn't out here, it stops here. Stops here. Because we're going to need that when we look at ripostes next week. Now, the tricky ones is when it comes for the leg. Theoretically, if the strike was coming for that front knee, it's unlikely they're going to take a swipe for that back knee. It's likely to be that front one. I can drop the stick down here as I'm doing here, but it's not great. Basically, the problem is if they come to swipe here and I just try and bounce that off, what tends to happen is as I'm coming back up again, that is still on enough angle to actually hit the knee. I need something a bit more solid, yeah? Because people, when they're attacking, particularly with shillelagh, they attack up here, it's bouncing straight back. When you attack the leg, it tends to be through. So you tend to have more power, actual swing coming through the leg attack. So that simple bounce doesn't tend to work, because what happens is the attack comes in, it bounces off, and then redoubles through anyway. So I'm still getting hit on the kneecap, I'm just taking half the power out of it. But your kneecap's quite delicate, and half power is often enough. So there's two options. There is the old traditional style, which if I had a spiky bit on the end and we were in a field somewhere, what would literally happen is as the strike comes in from my leg, I would plant this in the ground. And this is then very solid and this will hit it and stop. However, We're not in the field, and this doesn't have a spiky bit on the end, so that can't be my only option. So another option we do have is if it's coming in for that leg, I'm going to defend it by raising my leg and placing the cane down the side of my leg to absorb that impact. So, across there. Looks a bit ridiculous, but what I'm doing is here, and then back to guard again. Now, a couple of things that are important to notice about this. One is I'm not actually placing the cane against my leg. When I do this, the cane is between my hand and the kind of outside curve of my foot on my shoe, because this is all spiky, and if I place it directly against my leg and then let the other person hammer those spikes into my leg, I'm still taking a lot of damage. So instead, it goes on two parts. Yeah, we've got the shaved bits here where we can put our hands, and my shoe, which doesn't care, so none of my flesh is taking those spikes. So I can drop that down, get my parry, and back to guard again. And again, I can do that on the other side if they really were going to go for that back leg. It can bounce down there. Sorry, I thought you were coming to that side, my bad. So I can bounce through those. Realistically though, that's the parries, like I think literally every martial art I've come across. In reality, if my opponent goes for my knee, I'm just going to move my knee out of the way. Because that by far is much easier, because if that's happening, I can move my knee out of the way and I can be striking at the same time. So that's normally what I'm going to do rather than actually parrying the legs. But it's good to know that it's there. So that gives us our basic parries. Don't get hit on the head, one side, other side, low, low, leg, leg. And that covers pretty much everything we need in terms of parries. So I'll leave it there for this week, and we'll pick up on what you do once you've parried, some of the ripostes and things, and we'll start playing with it. It'll get a bit more interesting as of next week. Until then, have a good time, and we'll see you later.